Let me ask you a question, like a real honest question. Would you rather be this cyclist skinny fat where you look in the mirror and yeah, maybe the scale doesn't say that much and on the BMI range you're really low, but you just look fat in the mirror? Or would you rather be lean, looking in the mirror and happy with what you see? Regardless of whether you're male or female, this is something that we all want as cyclists. In fact, GCN's Dan has taken us on his journey of getting into better shape, quitting alcohol, losing weight, and hitting the weights. And you know what? I met Dan a couple years ago when I was on the GCN show, and I can tell you he was skinny fat, like most of us as cyclists. Me too. Now, here's the thing. In this video, if you watch it till the end, I'm going to show you how to use the weight room as well as your lifestyle to help you support a leaner, healthier you so you can get out of skinny fat and get leaner, fitter, faster on the bike, recover better, and improve your longevity and tissue qualities. So if you're ready, let's get into it. All right, so why does skinny fat matter? If I'm a cyclist, I want to be the lowest weight possible, right? Well, there's a whole host of reasons, but let's stick to the big ones, whether you're a racer or a recreational cyclist. Let's be honest, it is not fun getting dropped on the mountain, any type of hillside or incline, or when the power output needs to go up and you go off the back. It's also not fun to come back to the same ride you did last year and see that you're struggling to maintain the same pace. I'm not talking about on a windy day like we have here today. I am talking about on just a normal group ride where all things are equal, you are feeling that you're struggling. And this is where you have this yo-yo effect. It also means that from year to year, you're not gaining any type of power. And this is where people think, oh, I'm getting slower. It must be part of aging. Oh, that's bull. If you're not going through and increasing your lean muscle mass, you're not improving your long-term health outcomes, the wear and tear on the joints is going to be more, and let's just be honest, you're weak. You're weak, and that is something that we really don't want to have as cyclists. Now, here's 3 things that I can pretty much guarantee about anybody out there who is watching this, or like myself, is or was skinny fat. Number 1 is you are not following a training plan. It doesn't matter if you're a recreational cyclist or a racer, you need to have a plan. If you want to actually get a lower percent body fat, you've got to follow a plan, both for riding and for your strength training. Number 2 is you're not strength training year round. And this is one of the biggest things that we see with cyclists is they tend to get into the season, they go into maintenance, whatever that is, for 2, 3, 5 months at a time, which I hate to break it to you, that's not maintenance. That's called going backwards. Number 3 is you're not in a caloric deficit. And this is where our culture of having gummy worms and all of these other high sugar, high calorie foods on our rides with us is actually hurting you. Now, let's take it step by step. So step 1 is following a plan. This plan must have a focus on building base strength on the large compound movements like deadlifts, squat, rowing, things of that nature. It can be a little bit of isometric exercises here and there, but push comes to shove, you've got to be lifting in compound joint movements. But the riding program, when you're doing it, should be based and focused on only one thing at a time. And I've seen this numerous times. When people are in base, they come and tell me, oh, this winter I worked on my VO2 max, my sprinting, and my endurance. Well, you got none of it. And that's why you're kind of stuck where you are. Sure, some of the numbers went up a little bit, but none of it was really enough to stick. When you're in base, be in base. So these days we call it zone 2. Back when I was growing up, we called it long, slow distance. And this is the exact same thing, relabeled and the pendulum swing the other way. Now, ideally in base, we're not getting much high intensity work, which means that this should be something which is fairly easy to do. It doesn't mean you're going out and doing a easy club ride where someone's dropping the hammer and sprinting up every single hill. It means you are riding at a nice, steady pace. In fact, I've got a rider in New York out of Long Island named Mike. I've been working with him for over a year. And he just had 2 back-to-back weekends with the same group he's been riding with where they started going too hard and guys were sprinting off the front. And he said, all right, guys, I'm going to turn around and go home. He just kept after them at his own steady pace. And he wound up dropping all of them once they actually got out of the city into the climbs. And this is the beautiful thing about working on zone 2 and base. You are actually creating a more fat efficient machine. You're burning more fat, you're utilizing as an energy source. But in order to do this, 2 things have to happen. Number 1, you have to ride at your endurance pace. Number 2 is you should not be eating anything or stopping before 2 to 2.5 hours. This is a problem plaguing clubs all around the world. I've seen it over and over again. We stop at 90 minutes or just at the 2-hour mark. Why are we stopping? Well, this is what we've always done. Well, this is why you guys don't have the fitness necessary in order to progress. In order to help your body become a more fat efficient machine, you've got to work on getting it to use
fats, right? Makes perfect sense. Now, as we go through this, it doesn't mean that you're not eating before or after the ride, but rather within the ride itself. You're not looking to grab a gel, a chomp, or anything like that as you go through. Rather, what you're trying to do is use the energy that you have available and make the body kick over into aerobic exercise to kick into the fat stores that are going to burn the fat, which is stored energy. So you can use water electrolytes that are low to 0 calorie, but something that does have electrolytes for you to keep you going, especially when it's hot out there. Now, here's the other thing. We can also improve your fat burning by teaching you how to nose breathe. Now, there are a whole host of other benefits that come from this that we'll talk about in another video on the channel here, because it's a whole deep topic in and of itself. But nose breathing is going to self-limit you to be able to stay in the aerobic energy system the entire time. So as you go through, these are two things that we want to do. Three things, actually. We don't want to eat on rides that are shorter than 2 to 2.5 hours. We want to make sure that if we are taking in some type of electrolytes, it's 0 to no calorie. And then number 3 is you are nose breathing. Now, post-ride, you want to make sure that you're basing your meal around proteins and fibrous vegetables like broccoli, kale, or cauliflower, and then having the carbs. And these, of course, can be starchy, pasta, rice. All of these good things are good for endurance athletes, but after your ride, not during, and in the right amounts. And we'll talk about that in number 3. Now, the last part of following a plan is you should not really, it's easy. You should not be trying to overcomplicate this. You don't need supplements. You don't need all this fancy stuff. You need to sleep. You need to ride in the zone you're supposed to ride in, nose breathe, and don't eat anything on these 2 to 2.5 hour rides. It really is that simple. That brings us to number 2, and that is not strength training year round. Now, here's the thing about the science these days, and in general, when it comes to sports performance. The research is going to be at least 5 to 10 years behind what's happening at the front of the field right now. And this is just how it works. Science has to be incredibly reductionist. They have to look into something where there's interest, where there's money, as well as they then have the challenge of having to isolate and look at this one thing. That's how research is done. Now, within that, most of the research we're seeing these days is focusing on max strength, as well as is only 8 to 12 weeks in length. So a lot of people are doing these 8-week strength programs because that's what the science shows.
Now, here's the thing about strength training for cycling and triathlon that the research isn't telling you. That in order for a lot of these tissue adaptations to occur, especially bone density increase, as well as connective tissue and muscle tissue changes to stay, and neurological changes, you've got to strength train consistently beyond 8 to 12 weeks. So why is it that everybody's just focusing on it during the base period? Well, this is what the research is showing, but the research is limited to 8 to 12 weeks. If you actually want to go from skinny fat to lean, mean, powerful, and really feeling good and looking good machine on the bike, you've got to strength train consistently throughout the year. Now, as you go through the strength training year, your riding year is going to be backwards of what most people think. Many of us like to think about the winter as being max strength, and then we get into maintenance for about 7 months out of the year, which is ridiculous. That would be like me training you for 5 months for the bike during the winter and then telling you to go into maintenance during the summer. You'd fire me as your cycling coach, or at least I hope you would. If you want to get rid of skinny fat and get lean, you have to keep the strength training up throughout the season. But this is where perceived exertion and consistency are going to guide you. This is where you come into the gym. The strength sessions are going to be much shorter, anywhere between 30 and 45 minutes. They're going to be very focused, and you're actually going to be lifting heavy things mid-season. Why do we do this? I'm going to be sore, I'm going to be tired. Not if you do it well. If you do it well and you follow the outline of lifting something heavy but avoiding eccentrics, you will be able to see a big increase in your capabilities on the bike. Your strength training is going to help you to be able to recover and be more fresh for your on-bike performances.
Now, here's the thing. Even though it needs to be year-round, we just have to keep it simple. Big compound lifts with a focus on form and intent. So how you're doing the exercise, technically, as well as the areas that you're focusing on. It's like not just doing a squat, but focusing on pushing the floor away using your glutes. Now, the big compound movements can be a bit daunting, if you will. Learning to squat, learning to deadlift, rowing, or pulling down. That's why we start with basics like goblet squat, band pull through, or kettlebell hover deadlifts and bent over rows. These make them much more accessible. And you don't need the big heavy weights to actually see the results if you've been skinny fat and not done any strength training. We start with light weights and we get what's called the minimal effective dose to help you see the results you need. This is also where isolation exercises can be really useful as they help you learn how to move as well as have fun and help you increase the volume of total weight lifted. And that's how we actually progress you is week to week. The sets and reps will change or the weight will change where you're moving maybe 5 pounds, maybe 50 pounds, maybe 250 pounds more than you did the week before for the same movement. Now, the strength training for year round, when done for performance, is not for more weight on the bar and can actually significantly boost your performance on the bike when it's done correctly. Now, I talked about it in another video that we did back here in 2017, which I'll link to up above, somewhere up there. And essentially, the reason why this can help you is because there's 4 pillars when it comes to fitness: cardiorespiratory, neuromuscular, hormonal, and metabolic. Well, cycling covers 3 of those. And really, we're talking about cardiorespiratory, metabolic, and hormonal. But really, if you want to see a true big uptick in your fitness every single year, and I really mean that, you have to cover the neuromuscular side of things from strength training. And that will also have a positive impact on the hormonal status.
And this is where, as cyclists, we can get stuck in this cycle of skinny fat, where we are going into the weight room and smashing ourselves in the winter and really training way too hard. And then we go out and we ride our bikes a whole lot. And I've used this again earlier in the video, but it's just like me being a cycling coach and giving you a base period and then telling you, oh, don't worry about it during race season. Just go ride your bike and you'll be okay. Do maintenance work until your races. It doesn't work like that. Even more so with the tissue adaptations. And this is one of the things that we still have to learn in our community, and that is the bone connective and tissue changes occur over different amounts of time. So the nervous system and the ability to recruit the muscle happens the fastest. This is where you get these newbie gains within 6 to 8 weeks or 6 to 12 weeks. You start to really see some increases in the amount of weight you're able to do or the amount of reps. However, after anywhere between 3 and 6 months, those newbie gains fall off. The fascia takes anywhere from 9 months to 3 years to adapt. Your bones take at least 6 to 9 months to begin to adapt. And if you really want to make your bones stronger, you've got to continually hit the weights at least 2 to 3 days a week, or for most cyclists, 2 to 3 days a week, not much more, in order to see those tissue changes stick. And there's so many people out there saying, yeah, hit heavy weights and lift heavy stuff because that's going to improve your bone health. It won't if you're only doing it for 4 to 6 months out of the year. In fact, you'll barely get the changes that you're looking for. And then 5 years down the road, you'll have worked very hard during the winter and your FTP will be stuck, your power output will be stuck, and you're on that yo-yo of being skinny fat as well as just fighting to get back to the same wattage before. Now, here's the great news. When you adapt a year-round strength training program and you're in the gym or moving weights at least 2 days a week throughout the year, and of course, during race season or high ride season, maybe it'll be once for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then you're back to twice for a week or two, and then once. It totally works. You just need the consistent exposure. And this is what we want to do. And the take home for today is you've got to do it consistently. This is where the technique matters, the quality of the work matters, and just showing up and doing the work and having the energy available. And that ties back into what we talked about with having all of the nutrients. So making sure protein and fibrous vegetables are going to be your basis of most of your meals. And as endurance athletes, yeah, you need those starchy carbs. So we will have those as well. But if you want to ditch the skinny fat, we've really got to focus on changing how your plate looks during the base period, because it's a great time to make your body a fat burning machine where it's very fuel efficient, and that makes you even more dangerous out for these long endurance rides.
Number 3, and that is you're not in a caloric deficit. Look, I've been there. I've not been just skinny fat, but I have been fat, right? I have eaten too much and not eaten enough, not strength trained enough. I was easily 40, 45 pounds overweight after Corona because I was not riding in the amount that I needed and I was not strength training. Now, here's the easy thing. If you're not in a caloric deficit, yeah, you're an endurance athlete and you need all of those calories to keep you going. But in order to help you lose some of that fat and gain muscle while you're doing strength training year round and following a training plan, is replace some of the carbohydrates for protein. It has the exact same amount of calories per gram. That's 4 calories per gram for protein as there are carbohydrates. So this way we're aiming to hit 0.8 grams per pound or 1.6 gram per kilo of protein for your body weight. And that is really key because that is where you're actually going to trigger muscle synthesis and building of muscle. And here's a simple thing to do. Just count your protein and how much you're actually eating for 2 to 3 days. Buy a food scale and actually measure what you're eating. Most people are shocked, and I really mean shocked, as to how little protein they're getting. They think they're getting 100, 120 grams, and they're actually getting 60 or less. I've seen it dozens, if not hundreds of times over the last 2 decades that I've been doing this. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't eat carbs to the point your riding will suffer. Just dose your carbs around your riding. And that's it. These are the simple ways to help you actually get out of skinny fat, build lean muscle mass, as well as get fitter, faster, stronger on the bike. So if you found this useful, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, give us a like. Do you have questions? Comment down below and I'll be sure to follow up with you. And until next time, remember, train smarter, not harder, because it is all about you.